Hello, my name is Jason. On the inventables.com forums, my username is JDM. I'm going to do a few tutorials starting from the most basic operations in easel, try to get everyone comfortable with the software. Uh, on the surface, it's deceptively simple, but it is capable of doing a lot of precise work. So, first demo that we're going to do here, we're going to focus mostly on just the basic shapes and manipulation of those, and then we'll move into some other topics. First thing I like to do when I start a new file, I kind of got in the habit right from the very beginning, is I will begin a new document and then I'll rename it immediately, because otherwise you'll end up with a bunch of untitled documents and your files will already get long as you use easel, and then if you have a bunch of untitled documents and you have to go back later and open each one to see if you can throw it away, a lot of times if I know I'm just going to mock something up to see what it looks like, or for whatever reason to try something, I might name the file to something like delete01 or whatever that name is, just so it tells me right away that it's trash. And when I'm over here in the file menu and I go to open, I can go down. If I see any file that says delete me, I can just hit the garbage can and get rid of it and be done with it. Starting with the basic shapes, a couple of things that are right in the beginning that you need to understand is the positioning and sizing of these shapes. So when you have a basic shape and you select it by clicking on it, the bounding box that is put around it has a few interactive tools that help you to manipulate your shape and move things around the screen. So in each one of these corners, I can hover over it and I get a mouse over cursor, and that allows me to basically drag the shape. If I just click on it and drag the shape, I will do a uniform scale from the opposite corner that I grab. So you can see how that interacts. If I hold down the Alt key and drag, then it begins to scale from the center of the object. If I use the boxes on the sides, on the top and sides of the object, it lets me to non-uniformly scale. So just clicking and dragging grabs that portion of the shape and moves it. If I hold Alt, I'll get a mirrored scale from the center of the object. And it interacts the same way from the top and bottom. This little leg up here on the box is your free rotate. If you look over here on your these boxes over here, they update as you move the shape around. So if you want just an arbitrary rotation and you want to just drag it into place, you can do that. Or if you want to see how something looks, you can take a look at it, look at your basic number and the angle, and then it's okay to say I want that at 310. Then you can go over here and key that in and get more of a precise angle. You can also enter the size of the box you want directly, and then you have some options here with the position of the box. Right now this bottom left circle is ticked. That means that the coordinate system is aligning to this bottom corresponding corner on the shape. So even if I have a circle, it still makes that bounding box that's a perfect rectangle or square. So even if I have multiple objects, it will still make a bounding box. Now this is useful if I select more than one object at one time. I can still use these to position these two shapes. So I can key in on the direct center of the average of these two shapes and then decide where I want to put them. One little interesting thing here about the rotation. Uh, when you key in a number, let me change the shape here. And I'll get into more of these tools as we move through. You'll notice that if I drag this shape, the angle is updating in the field. So if you start to enter a number, say I want to rotate this shape 90 degrees. If I enter 90 degrees, it's going to rotate it counterclockwise. And so if I put in a negative number, negative 90, it'll rotate it clockwise into position. Just to remember that when I first started to use this and rotate, of course, I'd type in and get something that I wasn't quite sure of. But once you do it a few times, you really get used to it. So the positive for that angle, of course, is 270. So it's working its way counterclockwise around the circle. If I wanted to spin this around, I could do a 180 and turn it so it's upside down, or I could also use the flip vertical, which does the same thing. And you can see over here that it's updated it to 180 degrees. The positioning comes in very useful when you're trying to precisely lay things out. This black dot down here in the 0, 0 position is what is going to represent the 0 point on your machine. So I use that a lot when I draw an easel to give myself a position that I work from. So if I want to center this on that dot and begin to build from there using 0, 0 as a precise location to draw from, we'll select the center, and then I can zero this field out for the X and Y. The other four boxes in the position correspond to the four corners of the bounding box, so I can align that to that position. Just by changing that. Again, you also have your direct input for this shape. If I know for sure that I want an object to be 3 inches high to fit into a space, I can type in 3. And it did a scaling in one direction. I'm sorry, I did the X on that. This little box here, which represents like a lock, like a master lock, you can hit that key and that will lock this aspect ratio. So now if I type in a direction, it's going to keep that scale of the object. This edit points allows you to directly go in and edit points, and we'll get into that in a different demonstration that just focused on that set of tools. Another set of tools that you will find very useful for basic drawing is the alignment tools. The alignment tools only show up when you select more than one shape at a time. You'll see over here that they popped up. It gives me 6 options to align shapes to each other based on their location. So for instance, this alignment to the left, the way this works is it will take the edge of the shape that's furthest to the left and it'll align both shapes to that. Got an extra point in there. So this position represents the furthest left on the shape, or the of both shapes together. So if I select them and I use that tool, it will align them both all the way to the side. It's only working. It's only moving the shapes on the x-axis, which is your left and right. This tool is going to align them both to the center of each other, and as you'll see, when I press that, they snap to an average of the two shapes. So whereas the first one brought both shapes to furthest to the left, the center alignment on your X will align the shapes to an average between the two shapes. If I need to at that point, then I can go back into my position, set my 0 or my center position, and then I can type in the location that I want this center spot to be. The other option on the X is the alignment to the right, so it works just like the first one we used, but it takes the furthest position to the right and aligns both shapes to that edge. There's also a set of tools to do the same operations on the Y, which is going to be your vertical alignment, and they work exactly the same way. So if I want to align both shapes to a bottom edge, it's going to look at the point furthest down on both shapes together and align them to that. Center works an average between the two shapes. And then align to the top will take the edge furthest to the top. So that's the basics of working with our shapes and positioning and moving. We're going to use these concepts frequently in the other demos. And so I'm going to cut this one here just to keep these in smaller digestible segments. If you have any suggestions or comments on these demos, please visit the forums and you can send me a message. Or if you have a suggestion or something you'd like to see to figure out for yourself on a project you're working on, please don't hesitate to contact me.